Welcome to the 100 Master Coaches series featuring master coaches from around the world. Let's journey together on this 100 Master Coaches series with your host, Coach Mel, MCC. Christine Sachs is a master certified coach and works with highly educated and successful leaders in C-suite positions. She likes to joke that her clients don't believe in coaching until they work with her. Trained in ontological coaching, Christine provides a fresh perspective and highlights blind spots that corporate experience may not reveal. Now on to the show.
Hello, and welcome to the 100 Master Coaches show. This is Coach Mal, and today, I've got a special guest from New York City. She is none other than Christine Sachs. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Today's about you. We want to tell the world about you. But I'd like to take a couple of steps before you got into coaching. What did you do before that?
What didn't I do? That's probably more. I actually started life thinking I was going to be an academic.
All right.
I had all of the highest intentions to get my PhD, get a professorship, and just teach literature for the rest of my life. I loved analyzing narratives and stories. You'll see how that's plays out later. But I really love digging into the lives and the ecosystems and the whole, like, not just the characters, but how a story was written and the time in which it was written, and how all of these factors informed not just the story, but the way the story was told. And then I got to grad school. Truth be told, I was probably too immature for the rigors of grad school. Okay. I went straight after grad. I probably could have used some time to mature. And I wasn't a doofus. I was, for my family, I was the first person to get a professional degree or an advanced degree. And so I had no idea of what it meant to pursue a higher education. So I was just unprepared. I thought it was college again, but it was not. It was like, this is your job. And I was underprepared for that. So I left there, and then I just kind of worked my way around in different industries trying to find something that fit. Okay. And I spent, after bouncing from a couple of different industries, I found myself in nonprofit development. So basically I was a fundraiser for American universities, and British universities. And so I went and, would basically ask people to support scholarships and buildings and professorships and all of that. So I got to learn, again, a very useful skill when I became a coach. I got used to asking people for money and being rejected, and how to be professional around contracts and everything else, to make the process seamless for people who wanted to donate to various institutions. I also, at that time, spent some time fulfilling a creative bug where I wrote, produced, and directed some theater and film projects. Because in New York, you've always got a lot of interests, and you can, right? There's so much vibrant life here in New York. Yeah. So in my day job, I was doing fundraising, and in my kind of other life before I had marriage and kids, way before all of that, I was doing theater stuff, and it was very fun. It was really great. And so, that was life pre-coaching.
And it sounds, Christine, that you had like a dabble in a bit of that. So you supported that fundraising for universities because you want to be a professor. So in the other way, you were getting funds for them, right? So that was also done, right? And then on the other side, you went into this world of expression, if I can say that, and that kind of got you a little out there as well, and you kind of fit both sides of it. I don't know. Am I making this up?
I mean, I think. Well, how deep are we getting, Mel? We're going to go right there.
No, it's really up to you. It's really up to you.
I think that, like, I don't do theater and film now. It was definitely a great part of my life then, but my creative urges are actually fulfilled in my business and my practice. but back then it was really the first time that I was able to practice something that vaguely seemed authentic.
Wow.
I didn't have the language for authenticity. I didn't have the language for full self-expression.
Yeah.
I didn't come from a family that understood, practiced, or cared about that. I mean, they did care. They wanted me to be happy, but it's different from explore, practice, like get the solid job, get the health insurance. In America, you need health insurance.
I hear. That's what I hear. Yeah.
So theater provided an outlet to see that I could do something and have my authenticity and my thoughts really be a contribution to work being produced. And it was my first experience with that versus my day jobs, which had always been follow the rules. This is how we do things, the typical hierarchical top-down structure. So, so I would say that that's the role that theater played for me back then, which, I firmly believe that although I didn't create a career in academics, advertising, banking, or any of the things that I did, they all in some way contributed to who I am now. One of my favorite Instagram memes, which I feel incredibly cheesy quoting an Instagram meme, but one of my favorite ones is, in order to fully love yourself, you can't hate the experiences that created you. Wow. And that's very much how I feel about all of the things that I did. I came to coaching through my coach training program. Like I had never had a coach. I always joke that I was the only New Yorker who had never been in therapy, but never had a coach, never did therapy, never done any personal development. I just basically on a whim took this coach training program. And that was really it, So all of the things that came before it contributed in their own special way, in a way that I couldn't have orchestrated if I tried. Or maybe I just chose to relate to them as a contribution and not a waste of time.
Certainly not a waste of time. I'm sure there will be that linkages of stories that you're going to share with us today and how that has really helped you and impacted your business and how you obviously serve your clients. I'd like just to add that I think that's how New Yorkers get the therapy. It's just lining up for coffee. I'm just thinking.
These days, nobody's lining up.
Oh, anything. Yeah. That's it. Just picking up coffee, maybe. I don't know. It's like your regular place. And I've often seen this in, American movies, it's like, lining up, having a chat with the barista. And anyway. All right. So Christine, tell us, what made you leave this and jump into this new field called coaching?
I think it's a hilarious story.
Right.
Other people. So I have a friend, Nancy Kim, who to this day denies the story up and down.
It's a good friend.
Daughter
always denies. It's like, I didn't tell you. I didn't catch you.
It wasn't my idea. It wasn't me. My daughter was 17 months old. And so it's like 10 years ago or something. Okay. Almost 11 years. Jeez. Wow. Oh, yeah. Gosh. Almost 11 years ago. I was working a very comfortable job, very comfortable standard of living. I was just like, is this it? Is this all my life is going to be? I'm like having an early midlife crisis. I was 37 or 38 at the time. And she said, well, you're bossy. You could be a coach. I'm like, what? Exactly. Now this woman had never done therapy or coaching.
Oh my gosh.
She said, well, I said this and that. I didn't just say this. But I was like, I'm like, you call me the Queen of Darkness. Like, I don't understand the words exiting your mouth. And she's a good friend though. And so I said, okay, well, I don't know what coaching is. So let me do some Googling. And I did a bunch of Googling. I was like, I still don't know what coaching is. And so I've decided, well, let me check something out. And so I knew if I was going to do something like this, I would want two criteria. One, I wanted the program to be in person. And two, I wanted it to be accredited by the International Coach Federation. I wanted it to be in person because I know my learning style well enough. And if it were online, or back in those days, there wasn't such thing as video things. Everything was over the phone. So like trying to listen to a 3-hour lecture over the phone, like that wasn't, and I was not going to pay attention. So I was like, okay, it has to be in person. And it was basically a lottery. And I picked one. It's the only one actually that was all in person. It's called Accomplishment Coaching.
Yeah.
And I went on the first weekend and I said, I don't know. I still don't know if I want to be a coach, but I want whatever superpower magic situation this is, because I literally could not understand what was happening in the room, because it felt witchy to me.
Yeah.
It was just a, I mean, you and I, we do this now, so it doesn't feel magical anymore. But at the time, like given where I was starting, I was like, this is crazy. It took about 3 months for me to think like, oh, I think I want to be a coach. And then my drive, my ambition, all of the skills that I'd had in creating relationships, asking for money, all brought to bear. And the rest, as they say, is history.
History. Yeah. And so Nancy, it's probably laughing her mind off. It's like, told you so, right?
All my coaching people and be like, this is the woman responsible for me. And
there you go. What happened after that, right? You jumped in. I'm sure you spent a couple of months trying to decipher this witchery. And did it get easier after a while for you to kind of move in? Okay. Tell us more.
In my training program, every month was intended to create tension or friction between your belief system and coaching, right? To be in the immersive experience of challenge and being challenged.
Yeah.
Not only to be coach and think outside of your opinions and judgments, your biases, but also to have your own narratives confronted in a way that created a real transformational experience. And so it was like 12 months of this. I was like, oh, does it ever get easier? And it didn't. Like I got more comfortable performing coaching, like doing the act of coaching. But the being of coach, that took time to really kind of settle into my bones, to really feel like I wasn't doing something, but I just showed up and I was coach. I knew pretty early on that once I could stand outside of am I doing it right? Yeah. Is this the right question? Do they feel like they're getting value? All those questions that new coaches have.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed watching my clients achieve their goals, move forward, like really change their lives. And the weird part, and this is where the witchy part comes in, without me ever telling them what to do. Like even to this day, I'm like, this is easy what we do. Like people really, like they create some like amazing stuff and we never tell them how.
Thinking you're going to say, they create amazing shit.
I'm trying to be PG, Mel. I'm trying to be PG.
And on their own. But I like to just circle back to this point, right? It's like our self-imposter meeting their self-imposter. Think about that, right? And I know that word means a lot to you because part of your work is about, exposing that bit and that truth to people out there. So what do you think when the two collide?
It's a great question. Well, I think it's normal. I think as human beings, we are oriented towards protection.
Yeah, so true.
And so I have a lot of, and I'm constantly practicing empathy for myself, empathy for them, compassion for myself, compassion for them meaning clients, people I meet,
Yeah.
In that, of course they'd want to meet first or show up first with shield and sword, even if they don't know they're showing up with shield and sword. And I think that one of the great gifts about getting to the level of a master certified coach, which is really just an amount of practice and commitment to the art of what we do, in addition to the craft of what we do, that through the relationship that clients can come to whatever that looks like for them, but to the expand the comfort zone so that safety in being who they know themselves to be they let that out. Because I assert that everybody has a group of people that they know that they can just be real.
Yeah, true.
And it's really about the degree to which you're willing to expand that circle of influence, to know that you're going to be okay, you're going to be safe inside of a large group of people like that. You can fail, I mean, I think it's much more popular now than it ever has been. Brene Brown, Tim Ferriss, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But it's easy to listen to a podcast, to read a book, and understand.
So true.
It's a different thing to live and be vulnerable.
So true. And thank you for even coming with that vulnerability on this show, right? And I'm going to ask you right now, Christine, what was tougher? Practicing that art and trying to hone it, get better in that, or the business side of things? You and I probably met tons of coaches coming our way saying, how do we do this stuff? It's not just the art and all the bits of coaching excellence, right? It's this bit. What I got to do to put myself out there in this crazy world, right, today?
Well, I think it's different for everybody. I don't think that's one thing. I mean, for me, the art, the vulnerability was more challenging. The business side was a little bit easier simply because I come from a privileged enough background that I'm educated. I have some experience in business.
Yeah.
Biologically, I have an incredible executive function. So my ability to prioritize, my ability to, I'd been in business long enough to know that sometimes you make choices.
Yeah.
Right. So my background allowed for the business components to go more smoothly. But those things, the know-how didn't necessarily contribute to being warm and welcoming and compassionate. Whereas I've seen a lot of people, regardless, like sometimes it's culture, you don't come from a culture that, whether that be ethnic or socioeconomic or whatever, that allows for you to have the ingrained knowledge. And so there are different barriers across the globe, and no matter what country you live in, the barriers to entry around creating a business they're no joke. So everybody starts from a different point. So for me specifically, though, it was the art of being able to be present enough, give up being right, give up having to know it all, give up competition. And I have such a huge, probably because I spent most of my life in nonprofits, I have a huge commitment to service. So I don't have the thing that I think a lot of new coaches have. It's just like, oh my God, I can't share this lead because if they don't hire me, I'm gonna, and I never have that. So one of the things that I really stand for is that with any client I meet, it's like, how many coaches have you talked to? If I'm the only one talking to you, you can't hire me. You need to go talk to a bunch of people to make an empowered choice, because in that way, I know you want me. I know you want this process. Whereas I think newer coaches feel very like, I can't, that's not a good business building strategy. But for me, it's always been a really good business building strategy, because that person, even if they don't hire me, has such goodwill towards me that I become somebody they refer to, because they know me, they can vibe for me. And even if they didn't vibe with me, they know somebody who will. And then I create this virtuous circle or cycle with other coaches, like, oh, Christine's a solid citizen. She refers out. So there becomes like, oh, I don't have to worry about her stealing anything. Like,
that's true.
So,
yeah, you made a fantastic point, right? I mean, that whole mindset of being protective over what you have and being out there sharing it openly in a sense of, this collaborative nature versus competitive. And I think that is such an important part of our ecosystem these days, right? I like to say this: every information in the world is already out there. Why hoard it? So
it's already been built. You don't have to. There's like no
done.
Plan.
Every book's been written. Actually, every angle has been done. It's just probably you and I haven't experienced it, and that's why we're like, oh, this is my stuff and this is how I've created it. So, probably for younger coaches, right, coming in, just a mixed bag of information out there telling them this is the right way and that is the right way. And how does someone really truly find their path? Right? It's like, this is my voice. And you know where I'm getting at, right? This is the voice. This is my persona. And Christine, you have a certain persona. We were talking about it. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I would love to hear your perception, and so that, because I think it's hilarious, and then I'll tell you, and then I can share.
All right, guys. So during the pre-show, I was like, Christine, I just have to tell you this. I just love your branding, and and she's like, "What? Well, tell me more." I'm like, you've got this power that it's like, I'm gonna eat you up, and that's a little scary. And I just say, was it just an art direction that went a little bit too far that way, or is this really you? So we explored a little bit about that. But what you said about this word authenticity, right? Just came out really strong. So I'm not going to steal thunder on that one. Share.
Okay. So one of the, if for new coaches, if you don't know the core competencies, please go to the ICF's website and look up the core competencies. Part of that is being able to have the conversation that makes the most impact. And that's typically a direct conversation, a straight conversation. So there's no trying to be nice, trying to not hurt somebody's feelings or whatever. And most of the world doesn't practice direct talk. Are you familiar with transactional analysis?
Yeah.
Parent, adult, child, right?
Yeah.
Theory says that adult to adult is the most productive conversation because you can give feedback flatly and it's received, and you just, there's just some stuff to do, as opposed to the other things that step in, right? Parent or child.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a little bit of naivete or whatever, but I always, I took very seriously the commitment to be in partnership with a client, but also to make a difference for them. The people that I'm working with now, the limited resource is more time rather than money. It's more time rather than financial resources. So I always make a promise to them that if you show up, I'm going to show up, and we're going to cut through the bullshit so that our time is used effectively.
Yeah.
Yes, time is a made up concept, all that stuff. However, for me, there are people that a lot of the people that I coach are in positions where people don't tell them the truth anyway.
Yeah.
Not because they don't want to tell them the truth, but simply because they're in positions of power that carry favor, or people are afraid of them, or, make the list of anyone who runs a company. So they need to find those trusted partners that they can parse through and who will provide that mirrored reflection without judgment or trying to get something out of it. So appreciate that. I appreciate it in return. It's a little bit of branding where I'm like, if you've made it this far and you still want to work with me, even after watching my video on my website, great. But, I think, like, who knows? It might also be my being a New Yorker. We tend to be a little bit more brash and forward and whatever. But there are plenty of New Yorkers who are very soft and gentle and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking, Christine, is it some way of us even kind of by default, not pushing away, but kind of like dividing who we want to work with and who we may not want to work with, because they may not come with that same level of truth. Is that making sense?
So it can, by being willing to lean into who you are and your unique gifts. Because look, let's face it, we all do the same shit. We all do the same thing. What makes the coaching unique is who you are, that authenticity, that willingness to own the good parts and the ugly parts. It can be an automatic niching because, people who want this kind of personality couldn't find you.
Yeah.
But I think as a coach, you also get to say, what's the breakthrough I'm playing for?
Yeah.
Who will I allow myself to be hired by for what growth, for them, for me? I've been hired by people who I have to be incredibly slower paced, much more considerate. And I do that on purpose.
Yeah.
Because it's a breakthrough, because I want to practice a different skill, because I want to practice my listening at a different level. So I think it's the knowing of yourself and knowing your comfort zone. And then where do you choose to expand it? Where do you choose to make a difference? Where do you choose to play?
So true. I'm just curious about that conversation, right? Are you after those conversations that really go deep and expose certain things? Obviously, we don't plan it that way, but it comes that way because we provide a space where they can be themselves. Or on the other side, where it's on the surface, but it's working. It's also helping them a little bit more transactional, if you know what I mean.
I tend not to do the transactional level coaching. It's not enjoyable for me. And I start to feel like, I don't know, it doesn't bring me joy. So I just don't do it. Not every conversation I have is super deep and like really like flaying people open. Like not every conversation goes that way. Some of them are pretty transactional. And what do you need to do this week?
Yeah.
But I tend to lean towards a more holistic, whole person look at what's going to make the most difference. Because, I call myself a leadership coach, executive coach, but as well as I do, when we get in there and we talk to people, we're talking about their lives.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. What's your probably toughest experience thus far?
I don't know that I have a toughest, because of the way that I am so committed to growth and invest in my own development, because I firmly believe that the more I develop, the better coach I become, the more I can serve my clients and the people that I'm in connection with. So toughest is really kind of the breakthroughs, the breakthroughs that are out in front of me, because they're the ones that I'm working on now. Everyone, I can look back historically and say, well, that felt tough, but really the toughest ones are the ones that are just in front of me that I'm working on now.
Yeah.
With clients, I would say, are the folks who don't actually need coaching but need therapy, and redirecting them towards therapeutic services or counseling services and away from coaching, because those cases are it's very clear to me the limited amount of impact that I can have, and I should have. Like, I'm not a therapist. But sometimes people have an aversion to counseling or therapy, and I don't want to leave people unmoored or under supported, but I can't work with them around therapeutic issues. So those are the client-wise, those are the toughest conversations.
Certainly it's tough. And I think it's also tough deciding on that, right? It's like, how do I stop and kind of take that higher road and say, hey, don't know whether this is helping you tremendously. How does one say it and break it to them that way, in all professional and ethical way?
Right. I always ensure that we have that conversation at the beginning of any relationship. And sometimes prospective clients are pretty easy to spot, because they'll tell me, oh, I have this thing and I'm not doing anything about it. I'm like, well, we can't work together. When it shows up in an existing client and they hadn't realized, because typically if the coaching's not working and they're really doing the work, there's probably some biological, mental, emotional happening. And so we revisit the conversation we had in the beginning, like, hey, maybe this is something to explore. You had agreed to consider therapy should something show up. I wonder if something is showing up now, and have them go away and consider it. I mean, it's a partnership, right? It's never like, I can't coach you anymore, because that would be weird. But working with them to partner and look at, they have the resources, what resources are available, what do they need to bring to the conversation to be most useful? How can we, if they want to continue coaching and it's not something that actually needs for them to be away from coaching, like an addiction that's in full-blown addict, how can we create the guidelines or the boundaries so that I don't coach a therapeutic issue, and or when the therapeutic issue becomes too present for the coaching to make a difference. Every client is different, because every person's makeup is different. So it's a very sensitive and highly individualized conversation.
Yeah, certainly is. And that's the beauty about it, right? It's like, your passion of working in the arts, right? And I often think that every coachee right in front of me is a work of art. If they only knew they had the chance to take up the brush and change some of these strokes, right? Mm-hmm. And not just do it the way they've been doing it for the longest time, and it becomes so somewhat natural to them. And I call that getting stuck in a default mode. It's just uplifting to be able to do this work. What is your greatest joy in all of this?
Well, my daughter and my husband, hands down.
Wow. Tell me more.
I hands down, like, I do this work for them to be a better person for them.
Wow.
The part of the reason I got into coaching is because I wanted to parent her differently than I had been parented. And so, not that my parents were bad or anything, but like typically when kids, grown adults who have their own children, often do just the opposite of what their parents do, which is also not, I don't want to do that. I mean, my parents weren't terrible. They just, weren't, there are things I disagreed with. Let's just say that. But I wanted to parent her differently. Yeah. But I didn't have the skill set to do that. So that's part of the reason I got into the work. Part of that, like, well, I'm bored and I don't know what to do. And so I wanted to be a different kind of spouse to my husband. I wanted to be a different kind of mother to my daughter. She's also, she's a person of color. She is a girl. Like, I wanted her to see a role model of somebody who could basically kick ass being herself, not having to conform to X, Y, and Z, and that her individual spirit and nature was as valuable as fitting in to get along. Both are necessary. Like, you can't just be off the grid all the time, but finding that balance and that integration between authenticity and community.
Wow.
It hasn't really been tested yet.
I just love that. Seriously, it's kind of similar, right? I've got three kids, and I think they are my coaches every day of the week, and they teach me so much, right? So much. And I'm curious on what is one lesson, right, that you have learned, perhaps
from her.
From her.
That's a good question. Well, it's not so much that she taught me something, but she was the forcing function to really see the power of owning an error, owning a mistake. She just started middle school, which is 11 years old. It's a tough year because you don't know who you are, and it's a new school. Because the way where we are is you go to a specific school for a couple of years, and then you go to a new school. It's a whole new group. It's a bigger school. It's a lot of change. The hormones are just kicking in. Kids are trying to figure out who they are. And she started the school knowing no one. And I was having a heart attack. I was like, my husband really thought I was going crazy. He's like, what is wrong with you? And I'd realized through coaching and therapy, I'm adopted. And I'd realized through coaching and therapy that I was reliving some past trauma around sending my child into the arms of strangers, right? Like, wow, that's some heavy stuff, right?
Yeah.
But also in sharing that with her in a way that she could understand, not be like, here's all my trauma, take it, eat it. She like opened up and was much more compassionate towards me because she understood why I was acting so weird. And I was like, oh, like when you share something about yourself with compassion for yourself and for others, you're met with that in response. And she's at that age where like everything I do is embarrassing and stupid. So to all of a sudden like have her like want to watch a movie with me that night, I was like, You can't, nobody can see this, but I'm like making this like, what's going on face. So I would say that's probably the biggest lesson that I learned.
So good. I reckon we can all compile, a big fat book on the many lessons we've learned from our kids. This is so amazing. I'm gonna jump into the future now, Christine, and kind of ask you this question I sometimes ask on the show. We're in 2022 right now. Where do you see this future of coaching heading?
So I'm going to buck trends. I think that everyone is thinking about scale, and I think it's about depth. I think everybody's like, coach everybody in the organization, like Coach Hub, Better Up, all that stuff. But I think that I'm probably going to get in trouble with your listeners. But in my opinion, I think that especially given the way, if we think about the spread of remote workers, the impact of the pandemic, the craving for connection, I think we're going to see a turn from breadth to depth, and people looking for those deep, intimate connections. And how do you embed a coaching culture versus throw coaching at people? That's what I think.
Wow. And that depth, what could people experience from that depth versus just sprinkles of that multicolor sugar on it?
Well, I think that there's a way to embody the attributes or characteristics of coaching that would have people feel valued in their organizations. And if anybody listening wants to hire me to do it, I'm happy to do it. But I think that that's where people are currently leaning is what's the data? How do we efficiently create culture and pulse surveys as opposed to a real embodied, what does it look like? I mean, and not changing the circumstances. Like you're going to have people who are going to be remote. You're going to have people with different life experiences. You're going to have people of different backgrounds. But you and I know, and any coach who has a thriving practice, is that there's a way to hold it all. The translation of that to an organizational structure. How do you capture the qualities, embed them in, and have that be impactful at the depths of an organization's culture versus just a thing that you do to people? And that's like at the how, I don't know, because every culture is going to be really different, and what they can embed and how much they're willing to embed will be different. But I think it would be really, it would be a fun play to experiment with. Thank you.
Well, you've truly been just you. I totally appreciate of you just showing up and showing part of your colors on the show. Any last thoughts that you want to share with the listeners?
So I'm looking at a mug that I have here, and I forget where the quote comes from, but I think it's a great quote for coaches. I call myself and others forward to more truth and more love. And I think that's a great way to think about what we do every day with people.
More truth and more love. Wow. Well, it's always hard to say goodbye. We've got to do that right now, Christine. It's just been a pleasure to have you on the show.
Having me. Thanks for making it work with the time zones.
You're most welcome. This has been the 100 Master Coaches Show today with Christine and myself, Mel, saying thank you for watching. Do subscribe if you like it, and do continue to share these wonderful stories to the world. Take care, stay safe, and be all you can be with truth and love. Catch you later.
You have been watching the 100 Master Coaches series with your host, Coach Mel, MCC. Brought to you by Catalyst Coach. www.catalystcoach.live. We will be right back with our next Master Coach on the 100 Master Coaches series.